Welcome to day 110. Today we're going to be talking about Second Samuel chapter 2 to 3. Now we're going to be talking about David being anointed king over Judah. Prior to this, we know that when he was a kid, he was already anointed to be king of Israel. And they went to Hebron. The man of Judah came in the house of Judah, and he finally became king, and he showed honor to the men of Jabesh Gilead because they were the ones who buried Saul properly after the war when the enemies beheaded him. And so he honored them for showing him kindness. Meanwhile, in the northern part, Israel, Ishbosheth was made king of Israel. So Israel we have in the north, and Judah we have in the south. Ishbosheth became the king in Israel for 2 years, and David was king in Hebron for 7 years and 6 months. And then eventually he takes over both Israel and Judah. Here talks about Israel and Judah at war. Now Abner, the commander in chief or the one in charge with the army on Israel, and Joab in the south, they were gathered by the poolside, and they said that Abner said to Joab, "Let the young men now arise and compete before us." What a very casual thing to say, to have each other kill themselves. It's the Old Testament is filled with stories like this, and so in that day they had a very fierce battle, and 360 were killed in the Israelite part, and 20 in David or the house of Judah. And here there are three persons particularly mentioned: the sons of Zeruiah, Joab, Abishai, and Asahel. These are part of the men of David. Asael is one of the mighty men who was described here to be killed by Abner after he was chasing him. Abner was telling him not to chase him, and then eventually he struck him with a spear, and it went through and through to his stomach, and then he died. And so his brothers were trying to avenge him since then, which we'll talk about more later. So Asael was killed here, and the comment here is he is like the sinner chasing hard after sin. It will be the death of him, which it happened if he refuses to turn from it. And then Joab, the brothers, tried to avenge him that same day, but eventually they returned from chasing Abner. And we go into chapter 3. There was a long war between the house of Saul and the house of David, but David grew stronger and stronger, and the house of Saul grew weaker and weaker. Chapter 3 also talks about the sons of David and some of the mighty men. Now, we know that David already has, during this time, it's very polygamous, very polygamous. Michal was his first wife. That's the daughter of Saul. Then he married Abigail and then Jezreel. And so he bore many sons, which were described here in 2 Samuel chapter 3, verses 2 to 5, but in more detail in 1 Chronicles chapter 3, verses 1 to 4. Also, the list of mighty men was mentioned here in 2 Samuel chapter 23, verse 8 to 39, and 1 Chronicles 11, verse 10 to 47, although I'm not going to go through all of them. Now, from the story that we told earlier, David is few in number. Remember, the tribe of Judah is just one among the 12, but the kingdom is separated: Israel in the north and then Judah in the south. So I thought that was interesting that it's almost like one versus 12 kind of, but David is fewer in number, but what we saw earlier, 20 versus 360, that though small in number, they were very efficient and they know how to wage war. That's their stuff. Um, this will be like my one of my takeaway too. The mighty men, which were described, you can read that for yourself. But one of the stories that was mentioned there, when they were in the cave of Adullam, they were willing to risk their lives just to get David water to drink. And David wasn't even asking them for a drink of water. He only made a comment, "How I wish I could drink the water from Bethlehem." They were surrounded by enemies, by Philistines at that time. He wasn't telling them, but they were so loyal that they risk their lives just to get him water. But David refused to drink that water. Um, all these things that I'm mentioning, it's better for you if you read the Bible for yourself. I'm just trying to summarize it. And one of the guys there, uh, Josheb Bashebeth, he was the chief of three. He's the guy who killed 800 enemies in one encounter. Now, it was very well documented how this is my takeaway is that these mighty men they wouldn't be following David if David wasn't a leader worth following. It's very well documented that David killed Goliath with a slingshot with a stone. But further on, we will see that David's mighty men, in my opinion, they have achieved greater feats in their war. One guy, as I mentioned, in one instance, he killed 800 people in one encounter, and the other guys they killed 300, and they were not highlighted much as David, but I feel like it also shows their heart that they don't seek to glorify themselves. They don't do it for their names. And reflecting on how these mighty men followed David, it makes me appreciate more of Jesus' leadership too. When he was in his ministry, 12 disciples or 12 apostles, these guys, they were strong. I can imagine that they had their own personalities, own agenda, but Jesus was able to rule over them and send them to send them out to proclaim the good news. Also makes me appreciate of how a great leader is essential whenever God makes a move. When he, like what our pastor is saying, that when he wants to make changes, he touches the hearts of leaders. He puts them into action. And so I believe that's what's happening with a local revival here in our church in Wallingford, in this part of Connecticut, in this part of New England. That I'm very thankful to Pastor Jay, who I told him this before, and I try not to compliment him too much, but I truly appreciate him. He came from Texas, left him and his family, Pastor Carissa, they left their comfortable life there to the unknown, to the unknown, to the unknown, and it reminds me so much of how Jesus himself he didn't have to come down to be one of us, but because of love, because of obedience, but because of love that he humbled himself even to the point of cross. And so for me to see a person who does the same thing as Jesus did, I immediately they get my attention because in my heart I truly believe in this gospel thing, in this Jesus thing, or whatever you might call it. I believe that he is the truth, and whenever I see anyone model any Christ likeness, immediately they get my attention. And so that's how I feel towards our leader, that I would follow him as he follows Christ. It's not religious fanaticism, I believe, or me trying to insert my life into anyone's life. It's just when you have the same mindset, when you have the same father, the same seed, you have different personalities, but you're co-laborers, and that's how I feel towards my fellow brothers, fellow mighty men. We call it others like that, and to our Pastor Jay. So I'm very thankful to him and to his family, and yeah, very excited for what the future is going to bring. I just woke up, so I'm not so hyped up right now. But that's going to be my takeaway for today. Thank you so much for your time. I truly appreciate you. My hope is that you would continue to seek God daily through Bible reading, that this adds value to your life. My summaries are not the best, but that's probably hopefully will make you read the Bible yourself. That's the best thing to do. So thank you so much. Please take very good care of yourself. Bye bye.